Hello, and welcome to our third episode in our podcast on student recruitment with our associates at Stewart McKelvey. I am your host, Janet Zed, manager of student programs at Stewart McKelvey, and I work with the summer students and the article clerks on their journey to becoming lawyers. The podcast series aims to reach out to law students who are considering summer student positions and trying to secure articles. And this podcast aims to answer some of those questions and ease some of those nerves going into it. And today we're turning the conversation towards the articling experience. We're joined today by two associates who articled with us at the firm, and they'll share their experiences, hopefully tell some stories, and answer some of those questions that I get asked very frequently from students about what life as an article clerk is like. So let's get started with our guests for today, Nico Jones and John Morse. Welcome, guys. Nico is a corporate associate in the Halifax office. He graduated from Dalhousie Schulich School of Law in 2018, where he was awarded the Judge Corrine Sparks Award and the NSBS President's Leadership Award. Nico was both a summer student and an articled clerk with us in the Halifax office, and he was called to the bar in 2019. He was also the coach of the Charles P. Allen High School football team, in addition to being a member of the NSBS Credential Committee and their Distinguished Service Award Committee, member of the Governance and HR Committee at the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia, and the co-chair of the Canadian Association of Black Lawyers. He was their 9th annual conference co-chair in 2019. John Morse. John Morse is a labor and employment lawyer in the Fredericton office. He graduated from the University of New Brunswick Faculty of Law in 2018. John was a summer student and article clerk in our Fredericton office and was called to the bar in 2019. He currently sits on the board of directors at the UNB Red Bombers Football Club. So a bit of a footballer link here with both of you guys. Welcome, Nico and John. So let's get started chatting about the articling year experience. Articling takes place over a year, and during that time, I would say the learning curve is pretty steep. You'll be working with different work providers almost every day, building new relationships, taking on tasks that you likely have no experience so far doing, and all the while you're juggling law society requirements and bar course and trying to maintain your own personal life. It's quite a year. So Nico and John are going to walk us through it, and let's begin. Guys, who's there to help you out when it comes to your articling year? What kind of supports do you have? We do have a formal mentorship program, and I want to start with that. So, Nico, if you can tell us a bit about the mentors that you had as an article clerk and what that meant to you.
Yeah, Janet, thanks for having me. So at least for us, you're assigned two mentors at the start of your articling period. You get to choose your associate mentor. For me, I chose my associate mentor as one of the associates in our corporate group, Scott Pike. And then your partner, and you also have a partner mentor who's assigned to you, usually in a different practice area. My partner mentor was Chris Medill. Those are two people who you can kind of go to when you're going through your different rotations to ask questions, because when you're coming in as an articling clerk, you're very green and they're good people to kind of at least question and they can point you in the right direction of who to ask questions to if you have a question or assignment in their area of practice or outside of their area of practice. Also, one thing that definitely I enjoyed was getting to know those two personally. So with the kind of mentorship initiative, they'll either, at least in my situation, we went out for drinks and dinner on a number of different occasions where we just kind of talked about building a career and a practice at the firm, and then checking in on how articling was going for myself. And then also, I think at the firm, at least in Halifax, there are a large number of associates and partners here at the office who eventually over time you grow more informal mentor relationships with. So for myself, informally as an articling clerk, I got really close to one of our junior associates who was about 2 years ahead of me. And that was somebody who I would say frequently I asked questions to, and I knocked on their door kind of to review almost every assignment that prior to submitting. I would kind of get this person to look it over and just kind of give me any of their thoughts and opinions on if it looked good or if there's something I should kind of add or take out prior to me submitting it to one of the more senior associates or to a partner, just so that it made me look good as possible, kind of with that finished work product. And I was able to learn a lot through those discussions.
And did you find where you had an associate with Scott versus Chris, who is a partner, would you go to them for different things based on their stage?
Yeah, so definitely I went to Scott more often as the associate mentor, just because we actually had connections based on we both actually went to CPA and we knew some of the same people. Some of my football coaches went to high school with him and coaches that I was coaching with. So I would say I became really familiar with Scott and comfortable asking him kind of any question. And especially for me, I was very interested in the corporate side of things. So that's kind of where more of my questions did come up. With Chris, it was definitely more on kind of the bigger picture and down the line and building your practice. And he definitely would check in on kind of how the culture is feeling and how I'm feeling, kind of becoming acclimated to the culture and feeling welcomed at the firm and in those sort of situations.
And John, what about you? Did you have the same formal relationships with an associate and a partner, or you had a principal as well?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I think the first thing I'll say, and again, thanks, Janet, for having me here. Everything you said about articling is true. It's there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's a very difficult year. There's a lot of things to do and a lot of things to balance. But that's why mentorship was so important. And it was very helpful to me. So like you said, we did have formal mentorship as well. I had an associate mentor as well as a partner who was my principal. That's the way it works in New Brunswick anyway. So my associate, well, he was an associate at the time. He is now a partner, was Chad Sullivan, and my principal was Clarence Bennett. I work very closely with both of them. They're both labor and employment lawyers. And there is that formal aspect of it. The relationship, the principal relationship is, it's mandated by the Law Society, and it's, part of the whole articling year. But in terms of, I went to Chad probably way more than I should have. Just as Nico put it, checking things over to make me look as good as possible. Definitely did a lot of that. But I think that in our office in Fredericton in particular, the informal mentorship was really where it was at. And I think that really speaks to our culture because, I can look out my door right now and there's not a single door that I wouldn't knock on and ask a question. And that's the same as it was when I was articling as it is now. It's a very open office. Everyone is always willing to help because at the end of the day, everybody just wants you to be the best version of you and do good for the firm. So.
Thanks, John. I think your mention of the informal mentorship is something I hear quite frequently, and that can come sometimes even from peers who are going through some of the same things. They can support you as well. I should mention some of the other supports that we can provide for article clerks. So, you're not alone. You're not working in a silo. We have legal assistants. We have paralegals. As I mentioned, your peers, your informal mentors, whether it be associates or partners. I work with the Professional Resources and Development Department, which takes care of training from summer student all the way up to your path to partnership, as well as professional development and growth. We have a corporate services team, obviously great IT support, and our practice innovation team who are constantly seeking ways to make your life more easier, your work more efficient, and producing more cost-effective ways to meet your clients' needs. So I do think we try to put in place supports at a very, very early stage when you're an article clerk to know that it's pretty rare that you're alone in something, and there's all sorts of different directions you can turn, even if your formal mentor isn't the person at that time. We want to make sure that you're always supported. Yeah, John.
Just to kind of piggyback on that, you talk about all the things that we have in place, and something that I noticed and was impressed by and still am is not only are the supports there, but the people are more than willing to help you. It's not something that you can go ask whoever, but you all oftentimes have people pushing things out to you and saying like, hey, have you considered this? Have you looked at this? Have you thought about this training, or have you? It's very forward, and it's more than it just being available in my mind.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's part of the firm culture for sure. So I think, John, you started this conversation by admitting that the article clerk year is really hard, and there's no denying that. No matter where you are, we have a few of the law societies have implemented new bar courses that consume the whole year, actually, and they not what you guys experienced a few years ago, and that is a real juggle. In addition to all the work tasks that are coming your way, and we emphasize and we try to train time management, best practices, and you can only train that so much, and then there's the living it and the experiencing it yourselves. What tips would you guys have? I'll start with you, Nico, on almost survival skills and time management skills in this really intense and busy year.
Yeah, I would say kind of find the thing that works for you, or the process that works for you. So for myself, throughout articling, and then as an associate, and I would say now I finally figured out at least a good method that works for me on keeping myself organized with respect to the files that I'm working on, and then different deadlines and dates. I would say now I've found at least a method that works for me, and that's having a really organized inbox. But this one definitely, I would say, takes some initiative from myself on filing the emails and going through that process. I've gotten used to it, and I do it, I would say, kind of throughout the day. As emails come in, I'll file them. But I think overall, it's finding something that works for you personally, and then sticking with that and maybe tweaking that a little bit as you kind of go and you become busier. Because definitely articling, you won't start out really busy, but as the year progresses and as you kind of develop more relationships, I think naturally people will look to you more and give you more things to do.
And do you find that those methods that you've honed on staying organized, and for you it's your inbox, does that help you alleviate stress or maintain any sort of a work-life balance? How does being organized play into that for you?
Definitely does, just because with the email being integrated through my phone, I'll usually set a reminder on any sort of date. If it's closing date for a transaction, for example, I'll usually have a reminder of like 4 days prior or a week prior, and that'll hit my phone and give me a ping. And usually prior to that time, I've already been working towards getting everything ready for closing. But if it is something that kind of fell to the backside of my mind, I know for sure usually everything gives me that 4 to 5 day buffer to then, if I do need to scramble to get things done for the closing date, I can. So that kind of helps there. And then I've also, just for any sort of personal things like coaching, which would be outside of work, I do factor those into my calendar, so that things are blocked out and so that I kind of know where I need to be and when I need to be there.
That's great. And John, do you have similar time management and survival skills?
Well, I'll say that Nico, you're the man, because I still haven't figured it out. But it's no one's fault but my own. So I mean, the firm has presented me with a number of different, like Nico said, platforms and programs and stuff to utilize. And I've gone through a few of them. I've used them for periods of time, some longer than others, and sometimes they go by the wayside. But like I said, still kind of thumbing my way through it. But I am starting to get close to something that works. I mean, thankfully, nothing. It's not been to my detriment yet, but we're getting there. And but I think that what's important is just incorporating everything, all the different aspects, and it's more than just the technology. I mean, I keep going back to the people and the culture and stuff like that, but it's making sure that a lot of the files that I work on anyway, and even during articling and now as an associate, are involved with other lawyers, different assistant groups and stuff like that. So it's just making sure that everybody's on the same page more often than not, because even one of us is going to make sure that it's being taken care of. But yeah, the firm definitely, Trello, Outlook, taking full advantage of how NetDocs works. It's we're definitely set up well for it.
Great. And can you guys think of a time during your articles when you might have reached that point of feeling overwhelmed, or there's only so much more I can do in this day, and if you can remember that time and that feeling, and maybe you still get those feelings as an associate, what advice would you have on surviving almost that sense of heightened expectations and time constraints? John?
I mean, I think that's it all kind of, I've been there many times. In our office in particular, I articled with one other person, so there was two of us supporting 12 or 15 lawyers, whatever it was at the time. So there is a lot of expectation on us to do work to support the lawyers. So that came up quite a bit. I guess the important thing to do is open communication with the people giving you work. If you have something that needs to be done by the end of the day, whether it be for a filing or closing or something like that, and someone comes to you with a new piece of work and they kind of have competing deadlines, it's no one's going to fault you for saying, well, this is what's going on. Let's figure out a way to make this work. But it's being open and upfront about that kind of stuff. And then I guess kind of the step before that is triaging your assignments and just making sure that what is important, when it needs to be done. And that's kind of something good to do on the front end. But in terms of getting through it, it's one thing at a time, and that's all. You can only do what you're capable of, and at the end of the day, we're human, and no one's expecting you to be a law robot that can just churn out things 24 hours a day. So,
absolutely, Nico. What do you think about it when I use the word survival skills? What can you think of as almost a coping mechanism that you might have used as an article clerk to stay human and to stay afloat of everything?
I would say just kind of looking at it from the perspective of your co-articling clerks are also there, and they're going to go through those periods of time. So then for me, it was communicating to my clerks and to my co-clerks, and maybe in certain situations where I'm feeling overwhelmed, and then definitely utilizing each other and kind of assisting each other where one person might be really busy and you have the capacity to pick something up. So then communicating for us, for me, I articled with a group of 9 other clerks. So there was usually 5 of us on each rotation. So in situations where one of us was really busy and maybe feeling overwhelmed, we definitely had group chats and things like that where we could kind of shoot off a message and see if anybody had the ability to pick it up. I think that's one that I think all of us leaned on as clerks, and just kind of in situations where you didn't have the capacity, just trying to find a solution to be helpful, and then that also alleviated some of our own kind of stress and helped us get through it and maintain kind of positive relationships.
Thanks, Nico. You sort of have segued into my next question, which is great on teamwork. And as you mentioned, in the Halifax office, there are sometimes up to eight or nine clerks at one time. And you mentioned the methods that you guys would have used as a group, whether it's team chats and picking up work assignments based on your availability. John, you would have been clerking with one other clerk at the time. So how does teamwork look when it's two articled clerks?
So teamwork between when there was just the two of us as clerks, a lot of what Nico just said about supporting each other, I mean, that certainly is true even in a smaller office. I don't know how many times the individual I was articling with would just be, let's get out of here. And we would just get up and we would go get a coffee, or we would go to the kitchen, just kind of take a break. But I think on the larger scale, teamwork generally is huge. And I certainly felt that and continue to feel it here. And that's extending beyond just who you're clerking with. So, you have your assistants, you have the lawyer that you're doing work for. I've always felt, and I've actually said this to more senior lawyers when I was working on files with them, especially when I would be involved for a longer period of time on a file, not just a smaller piece, to say like, geez, I really feel like I'm part of the team right now. Like I actually feel like I'm contributing and adding some value. Like it's, teamwork is very important, and I think that we do a good job of it. So
that's great. I think when we spoke a little bit earlier about article clerks kind of joining in their first week of orientation as summer students, and you become quite a cohesive group, and that continues through the years. It's not just within that group, it's, as you say, on different teams that you do actual work with.
And something, sorry, Janet, that I just thought of on that when you talking about orientation, because in New Brunswick anyway, so going back to when I was a summer student and an articling student, we do training with the other students from the other offices within the province. So I went to training with the clerks and students from Moncton and St. John. So I mean, there was a larger group of us then, and I think that training up front and getting to know those people was very helpful, because oftentimes things happen in our office, at least in New Brunswick, where we need to pull in resources from one of the other offices, or something needs to be done in that city. So I can think of a number of situations where the delegating lawyer on a file would say like, hey, get somebody in St. John and figure out this aspect of this, and we'll go from there, kind of thing. And having that little, I don't know what you would call it. We're almost like a team at that point. And, I know that I can pick up the phone and I can call Graham in St. John, or I could call whoever. It's that easy. So
that's great. Yeah, it's maybe putting words in your mouth, but a network that you can lean on.
There you go.
Lean on, not just within your office, but that's the benefit of being a regional firm, and we work regionally and have the opportunity to expand that team when need be, certainly. So I have one more question, and I'm hoping you can answer this in just one sentence. So what advice would you give law students who are thinking ahead to the articling experience or the summer student experience? One piece of advice.
So the one piece of advice I would give is it has, and you said one sentence, but it has two parts.
Okay.
One, you need to be yourself, because I mean, it is a difficult year, and you can't lose yourself in trying to please everyone and fit whatever mold you think exists, when spoiler alert, everybody's their own person. You don't have to be someone you're not. And then the other part of that, I mean, it almost sounds kind of contradictory, but be flexible, be adaptive, and just be willing and able and open to receiving these new ideas and stuff.
Thank you. Definitely longer than one sentence, but valuable nonetheless.
Yeah.
Nico?
Be yourself and be adaptive. There you go.
Be your adaptable self.
There you go.
I would say to be open to learning and kind of practicing in the areas that you might not have come into articling interested in. So just to expand on it, because I would say that was not the best way to phrase it, is essentially kind of, I think, being open to the different areas of practice, at least that you get to experience at a firm like Stewart McKelvey, just because law school, I would say, might give you an indication or a taste of some of the different areas, but definitely not all of them. And then as a summer student, at the same time, you really, I don't think really get to dig in deep and kind of see where you fit best, figuring out maybe the nuances of the different areas of practice. But in articling, you get a little bit more of a longer period of time, kind of getting work and getting experience in those areas of practice. So then it can really inform, I think, you steering your career and building your practice down the line. So I know for at least one of the clerks that I articled with came into articling wanting to do one sort of area of practice, and then kind of towards the end that had shifted based on actually getting the experience of doing the work, so doing the job, and or kind of building relationships within that practice.
That's a great point. Our articling year is set up, I mean, we set it up this way at Stewart McKelvey, but the law societies are also laying this groundwork that your exposure should be as great as possible. So in the Halifax office and in the St. John office, we have formal rotations where you're in a corporate rotation for 6 months, and then you switch over to the litigation rotation, ensuring that you get exposure in both areas. And then within that, there's a labor and employment rotation. And the Law Society also, you'll have a yearly and bi-yearly check-in to make sure, have you done this? Have you experienced this? Have you had exposure to this? And I think that's a great opportunity that's laid out for you, but then you also have to be your own driver and navigate that course to make sure that you are remaining open to different areas of the law. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Nico. That was the last question that I had for you guys. So thank you very much for joining me today. I think it's been a great conversation, and it's really built on the conversation that we had in our last episode on the summer student experience. Our next episode and the final episode in the podcast is with two of our associates, Giles Ayres and Kristen Fulton, who will be talking about life beyond articles. So what's next and how you forge your path after being an article clerk, becoming an associate, and what's up next. So we look forward to that, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.